everyone, and welcome to our fireside chat on orchestrating the buyer journey with AI. We're joined by two industry leaders from Hyperbound, Sriharsha, co-founder and CEO, and Atul, co-founder and CTO. Sriharsha, could you start by telling us about yourself and Hyperbound's mission?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us, Jenny. We're really excited. My name is Sriharsha. I'm co-founder, CEO here at Hyperbound. At Hyperbound, we are building the modern solution to help train enterprise sales teams to make sure they're ready for the phones. And so we train salespeople on cold calls, discovery calls, negotiation, pricing conversations, whatever involves a conversation between a seller and a customer. We come in and train the seller. So that's what we do at Hyperbound. We've been building the product for about a little over a year. We went through Y Combinator last year, raised a seed round, and we've just been growing ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. Atul, is there anything you'd like to share about your background and your role at Hyperbound?
Yeah, absolutely. So quick background on Sai and I is that we're both conversational AI engineers. We've been working in this space, like with this technology, this conversational AI technology, for nearly a decade at this point. So this is a huge passion project for us. And we're so excited to be here, to be doing this, and to see the excitement that Hyperbound has gotten over the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like AI is such a hot topic right now. Everyone's looking for ways to like better improve their current systems. And I think if you guys are really solving a pain point with how just to optimize the current sales system. So I'm excited to have you guys join us. To kick us off, we're going to kind of jump into just the broad impact of AI on the buyer journey. So how is AI reshaping the traditional buyer journey, and where do you see the most significant opportunities and challenges? I don't know, Sriharsha, if you can kind of talk about it from like the business perspective, how do you see AI kind of reshaping traditional buyer journeys?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Jenny. I think, we're obviously seeing AI come into every part of the sales process. Every day I wake up, I open my social medias, and all I see is just a new AI startup in sales, trying to disrupt a whole different part of the sales process. So we're definitely seeing it come top of funnel, right, late funnel, right? Particularly, you see a lot of prospecting tools that are using AI to automate research. Right, we're seeing tools that are being able to automate emails, and we're even seeing some AI SDRs that are hopping on phone calls with customers, and they're able to just have the entire conversation with the customer. So it's crazy how fast things are moving. From our perspective, we've always been of the view that AI is going to be a critical part of being. It's going to be used by sellers, right? It's not there to replace sellers. So we really believe in that vision. And so our entire focus has been, how do we up level a seller using AI? And I see that becoming like a very critical part of every company's infrastructure moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, like AI is not a new thing. Do you guys see a huge impact from kind of like the shift over the last 2 years with the introduction of ChatGPT, all the other similar AI tools, or just in general technology
Absolutely.
advancements? Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good, Jenny. So absolutely, right? So we work with a lot of sellers, being in the position that we are at Hyperbound. And I think the biggest change that we've seen since the advent of ChatGPT is how informed buyers are now, right? Buyers are coming to these conversations more informed. And the sales rep's role, in many ways, has transformed a little bit from just being someone who digs into pain points, magnifies the problem, into someone who now needs to also present a lot of technical answers to questions as well. We're seeing sales reps being asked more and more difficult, challenging questions that require heavy context on those cold calls, on those first discovery calls. And it really just magnifies the importance of having a well-trained and well-practiced sales rep in those early conversations. We might be biased because all of our customers are actively solving that problem, but it is something that I feel is a larger market trend.
Yeah, I mean, you touch on it a little bit. You say that you're talking to a lot of sellers all the time. How is really this collaboration between technologies and sales enhancing the orchestration of your tool and overall just the buyer journey?
Yeah, I think a big part of why people are finding, at least I'll give it to you from the hyperbound perspective, right? Why people find this such a revelation from the way training used to be done in the past. So you're probably familiar with role plays, right? So the way that sales teams train today is they role play with their managers, or they might role play with their peers. And that's a very time consuming process. And many times it's very awkward. And most sales reps don't enjoy hopping on a call with their friend and just like pretending like they're different people and role playing. And it's always very awkward. So we've created like an objective experience where every rep no longer needs to feel awkward or needs to feel like they need to take someone else's time to be able to get their practice in. So that's like the biggest revelation with Hyperbound is like for the first time, if I'm a seller and I want to get better, I can just 2 a.m. my time in bed, I can go into Hyperbound and practice and get better, right? That's something that a seller could have never done, let's say like even 2 years ago, right? So it's a huge time save for the managers, but also like a huge resource for sellers themselves who really want to become the best they can.
Yeah, no, I love that example. I mean, as someone who hates role playing, even though I'm on the marketing side, like I totally hear what you're saying. It would be really nice to just kind of have a tool that I could go and work on growing my own cell capabilities. Um, Atul, is there anything you'd like to add? I mean, you're kind of coming from the technology side. How are you kind of seeing this collaboration between tech and sales play out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest transformation that's happening, right, is in tech or in machine learning, we like to call this a knowledge transfer problem, right? The biggest transformation that we see happening is that the knowledge transfer is happening faster and easier, right? So the knowledge that's being contained within one of these AIs is being able to be transferred down to the level of the rep. So an AI, like a rep, is capable of responding to these questions intellectually, is able to guide the conversation with the experience of as if they had reviewed thousands of calls, because an AI is like subtly guiding them and training them in the background. And buyers are coming to expect more and more of these like high quality interactions. Like buyers are getting tougher. I mean, if you talk to any sales team in the last year, you'll see that like no one's hitting the numbers that they're supposed to. The quotas are still going up. Everyone's struggling, right? And it all comes down to the buyer expectations and the skill issues at the end of the day. So I'm really like excited to see, like, we're one of those products, but there's a ton of other solutions in the space as well that are complementary to us that use tech to enhance sales, to make the seller just a more informed and well-rounded seller.
I wanted to add one more thing to that as well, just even from a data perspective, right? Like, let's just take the Hyperbound example, right? For the longest time, when you tell your rep to go do a role play, right? How do you actually get data out of that? Like, if I'm a manager and I just trust my rep did this role play, but how can I actually take that data that I get out of that role play to better target my coaching in the future? That just wasn't even possible before, because there's no way to collect that data unless you gave your rep a recorder and say like, hey, go record every call, every role play that you do. Right. But with our system, it's really changed that aspect of it too. Like admins have all the data they need to target their coaching now.
Yeah, and I mean, we've touched on it a little bit. You're talking about how this practice allows them to become better sellers, and making them more informed. Are there other aspects that help with like the personalized buyer experience and overall scalability that this AI provides?
One very common use case for hyperbound bots that we love is, let's say that you have a very important discovery call book, Jenny, with a really high value account, right? You cannot burn this lead. This cannot be a practice opportunity for you, right? Like this is like if you close this customer, you're an AE and you close this customer, you're going to hit your quota uh, for this quarter. So what we've seen customers do is, before these high value interactions, go through, build that customer, build that prospect in Hyperbound, role play with them, get like batting practice against the objections that they expect to receive from someone who works at this account, given all the account research that they already have. And then now, when they go and actually hit one of these interactions a couple hours later in real life, they're prepared, they're confident, they respond so much better and so much more informed, right? And when you think of the value of 30 minutes of practice for now closing that like multi six-figure account, if you're an enterprise AE, it's just such a no-brainer. And Sai, you want to share the story of Chris?
Yeah,
Uh,
no, we actually had a recent customer that actually he had a big call with C-suite persona over at Nike, and he went on to Hyperbound, built a Nike bot literally 30 minutes before that call, practiced on it, and he aced the call. And he came back to us and he was like, "Guys, if I hadn't built that bot, I would have crashed and burned on that call." He's like, "You genuinely saved that deal for me." And that's something that people just never would have done in the past, because 30 minutes before the call, what are you going to call up your friend and have them jump on a call with you? It's very unlikely, right, to practice that. So that's the idea.
You guys mentioned a little bit about like building the customer. Are there things that you guys advise when they're doing these practices to have the most realistic experience when doing these AI practice calls?
So being in the unique position that we're in, right, having millions of hours of call data to go off of, we really know what makes for a realistic practice session and what doesn't. But from the other side of things, we also know what makes for a useful practice session and what doesn't. So there's a really important distinction between just being realistic and being useful, right? Certain things in a training context, like you might actually want to cover more objections in a training call than you do in a real call. You want to make it harder, in fact, in many senses, for the rep to overcome. So, like being in the position that we're in, we've got a ton of data on what makes for useful training, what makes for realism, and we're able to balance that within the product. So customers get, the training when they need it, they get the realism when they need to boost their confidence, and across the board, just data is king. So it's awesome to see it in practice.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said, that you can really build in these practice sessions more objections. I think one of the pain points that people often come across when doing role playing is sometimes it's hard to come up with those objections in the moment, and we end up just being nicer to our coworkers than being helpful. So it's nice to have something that's so objective.
100%. Yeah, we hear that all the time. It's very hard to be like a rude prospect when you're just doing role play with your friend or with your manager, right? So yeah, no, that's definitely something we hear all the time.
Yeah, and I definitely see the advantage of just being overall more productive as a sales leader or even as just a seller just trying to improve. So I kind of want to get into a little bit more about any additional feedback from sales teams, and how that has helped develop the AI bots and training methods. We just touched a little bit on like you guys have all this data. So I would just love to know a little bit more into what that looks like.
Yeah, feedback is everything to us here at Hyperbound. In fact, before we started this company, before we launched this product, we did 2,000 user interviews uh, in order to really get our bearings on this particular niche, right? And every week we continue to do 9 to 10 hours more of those user interviews. So we're really relentless in that, and learning more from everyone who's using the product, right? So one unique thing that we do, which I don't think a lot of other startups or even larger companies in our space do, is we've set up a team of customers that we meet with every single week. And we don't meet with them in like a group context. We actually meet with them one-on-one, right? So my entire Thursday and typically the entire Friday and maybe a lot of Wednesday as well is blocked off for these one-on-one meetings where we go through and we really dive deep into like exactly what their use case is, what their feedback is, like what they would like built next in the product. Our customers are designing a roadmap for us based off of like what they know is most useful to them. And we're able to take these insights from across all these customers to decide where the direction of the product should be. And it's really user customer led at the end of the day, which has served us very, very well so far.
I think that's a really unique perspective. A lot of the companies that I'm talking to, even at this event, are either sales led or product led. And you kind of touch a little bit on why it's so great to have a customer led. Does it also kind of help with user adoption, overall retention of customers? I know that's kind of a big area for people who may be struggling with maybe closing more deals, but even just retaining the customers they currently have.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, from day one, it's interesting. Like for most companies at our stage, the number one metric that everyone goes after is revenue and growth. And while those are important to us as well, customer success, I think, has been our number one priority. Honestly, just because even when you think about what happens a year from now when these contracts come up on renewal, how, did we actually accomplish the goal of making sure our customers are getting value out of what we built, and are we delivering on the promises that we've made to our customers? And that's really important to us, because happy customers is what helps you succeed, right? Ultimately. And so that's been a huge focus, and that's why we have those weekly meetings. And we some of our champions, like, they look forward to those meetings, because they feel like they get to be part of our journey, and they get to be part of building this product of the future. So that's something we've done really well to, like, just getting our customers excited about the future of this technology.
Yeah.
And to add on to that, right, it's because our customers are essentially in the driver's seat in many ways that we've had such high customer satisfaction so far. In fact, we just processed our first ever mid-cycle renewal like a couple of weeks ago, and we're en route for the second mid-cycle renewal, which, to us means way more than any revenue metric could.
Yeah. Well, I love that perspective. I kind of wanted to pivot a little bit and talk about like the skeptics of AI. I think a lot of us feel like AI is taking over a little bit. I'm in the camp of where AI is great, but I still think that human touch is necessary. And I think you guys would agree with that. So how do you really achieve that balance between AI with the human touch?
I love that question, because both Atul and I are also AI skeptics.
Yeah.
We are AI engineers, but equally AI skeptics as well. And I think it's a good question to ask, because there's a lot of tools that claim a lot of crazy things these days, and it's, as a buyer, it's very hard to figure out, like, what's actually real, what's not real. And it's the number of companies where I've heard of buyers, like, that get really excited, they go into the demo, realize the demo doesn't actually work. And especially with some of these AI SDR tools I've been hearing about, I've heard it over and over again. In fact, every customer that tries an AI SDR and it fails, they come straight to us. They're just like,
Yeah.
I couldn't automate my salesperson. I can see why that's not ready. So I want to make my sales team better, and I'm here. And so, our focus from day one has been, like, we believe in AI helping the human, not replace the human. And so I'll let Atul add on to that. I'm sure he has some thoughts.
Yeah, no, being like a machine learning engineer, you get to really understand what the limitations for AI are, and how not to be overconfident in the abilities of the product, which is why we went down this path of AI for human enablement at the end of the day. We're really, really strong believers that, especially in the B2B sales context, humans aren't going anywhere for a very, very long time. You're not buying a six-figure deal from a bot, at least until 2050. Like, from our perspective, right, humans really are here to stay in the like on the sales side in these B2B companies, and we're going to be there to make them better, to make them like to solve the starter gap. So a really, really common issue that you've probably heard about before as well, Jenny, is entry-level jobs getting automated by AI, right? So like it's the easy stuff, the entry-level stuff that can be automated by AI, that now means that entry-level role isn't available to someone. You don't have the opportunity to learn and grow that entry-level role. You need to start at floor one, not the ground floor. And solutions like ours are really designed to make that transition possible. Like, how do you upskill someone to get there without having, for example, 3 to 5 months of messing around with an entry level role to get there?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, one thing I keep thinking about is like you guys brought it up. There's so many tools, and I think a lot of sellers are trying to find the right AI tools. And this is also changing buyer expectations. We're expecting people to be more on top of it. We've covered all of this, but how can these sales teams keep up? Is it really just increasing training and having more automated training so your team can be more independent and you can overall have just more time then to sell?
So let me put it this way, right? Like I've been telling I have a lot of friends that want to get into sales tech. They want to start a startup in this space. And the number one thing that I tell other founders now is like, if your pitch starts with the word AI, you're not talking about you're not solving the problem at hand. Like what you're under the hood, what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to solve a problem that will help this customer. And if you're focused on like, oh, we use AI to do X, that doesn't really mean anything as a buyer to me, right? That's why, if you notice, even at the beginning of this conversation, when you asked me what Hyperbound did, I never said the word AI. And I will, and I won't, because that's what we use to solve the problem that we do, but it's not really like our focus, if you understand what I mean. And I think where I'm getting at is that buyers today, I think, need to stop getting, they need to get out of the mindset of like, oh, I need to go find an AI tool right now. I need to go figure out what solves my problem, right? And let me go at it with that lens, right? So it's bothersome. I mean, I run into buyers every day that are just like, oh, I'm just looking for an AI tool. I'm like,
Right.
what are you trying to solve? Like, tell me what you're trying to solve.
Well, that's what I'm hearing too, is it's just like there's this rush for AI tools and then there's no execution and then you have the failed ROI. So I really like your advice to really just identify what the pain point is and lead with that rather than I'm just looking for an AI tool.
Yeah.
There's directors of AI transformation out there. Like that's a job title. Right? Like folks are there in orgs to procure AI tools, and we're going to see a massive wave of churn in the next year because of that. Not for Hyperbound, hopefully, because of what we've been putting in place, but a massive wave for churn for a lot of these AI startups, because folks are buying without really thinking, and it doesn't, especially given the economic climate right now, that's not going to play out well.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for sharing your valuable insights today. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you guys like to add? Any final thoughts, or anything that you think should be a key takeaway for our audience today?
Oh, one quick thing. Hyperbound is expanding a lot right now. We're growing the team. So we're always looking for top sellers. We're looking for potentially some top marketing talent and a little bit as well. So if you're interested in learning more about Hyperbound, you want to reach out, you can hit us at founders@hyperbound.ai, and we'd love to chat.
Yeah. And I think on my end, I would definitely, I'll leave it at where I ended on the previous note. That's probably the biggest takeaway for me from this whole thing is like, we're all here to solve problems, both from the buyer side and from the founder side. So let's focus on those and like not about like what AI tool I need to bring in. No, that's really all I have to add to that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you again, Sriharsha and Atul. I really appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.